Buy my novel, Escape from the Village, from major booksellers online. Go to escapevillage.com. Subscribe to my Substack. Go to fountainheadforum.substack.com. Thank you. Welcome to the party, pal. I have Octavio. This is Fountainhead Forum 143. I have Octavio Bermudez. He is in Buenos Aires, and he's a student at the University of Palermo, and he's been published on the Mises Institute website. He was also on another show, and so I said, I should bring this guy on also because he's only 19, but he speaks English well, and he's sounds like he's got a bright future in front of him, and he's certainly very excited about what's happening with Javier Milei, which we're going to discuss again. So how are you, Octavio?
I'm doing all right. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Okay. First of all, Octavio, how did you get interested in free market economics?
Well, it was basically because of Milei.
Yeah.
It was not much about the arguments he gave in favor of the free market, but the people he cited. Because he used to cite, or he does actually, Hayek and Rothbard and Mises. So I heard especially Milton Friedman. And so when I heard those names, I was like, who are these people? I don't know about them. This was years ago. And so I searched Friedrich Hayek and Milton Friedman, and I saw that they were Nobel Prizes. And that made a good impression on me because I didn't used to think that pro free market people were actually important. I thought that they were only just very low intellectual people. I didn't think much of them. But when I saw that these guys were Nobel Prizes, I was like, okay, there's some serious stuff going on here. So I read Free to Choose, I read The Road to Serfdom, and then from that on, it was just an upwards drive towards libertarianism. So there's where I got started.
Road to Serfdom is a good book, especially if you're not really that well versed in economics. That's a book that people on the street can read. I definitely would not advocate that people on the street read Ludwig von Mises, but
oh no, not
initially. He can be very difficult. But interesting. Did he say anything about he cited Alberto Bernegas Lynch in the inaugural address, and also a Jesus
Huerta de Soto,
Huerta de Soto, and of course de Soto, and I've been finding also that there's a really great tradition of Spanish liberal thinking that I didn't really know much about, but I'm learning about it, and it's maybe more impactful than I ever realized.
Yeah, I mean, de Soto is pretty important. He made the study on business cycles and banking. It's a huge book, the best there is in Austrian economics about that subject. And then you got, Alberto Venegas Lynch, who is also very good. He does, I think he has a book usually his books are articles that he published in various journals, and he compiles them and sells the book. But yeah, there's a very good, great tradition of Spanish-speaking liberal people.
Well, even going back further, because I'm finding that some of these people influenced our great founder Thomas Jefferson from who was born in 1743, and people like that, going back to some old the school of Salamanca in Spain and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Because a lot of those men at that time read lots of language. They all learned Latin. They ended up learning Spanish. So yeah, it's really very interesting. Maybe we're more I don't know if we necessarily acknowledge that influence here as much as we should. But yeah. So one thing you've said that Milei is actually more of a Chicago school than an Austrian school. What do you base that on?
Yeah. Well, he's definitely not a praxeologist. He doesn't derive economic law from the action axiom. He uses math to get to those conclusions, but he still does. He has there are some classes that he gave in a university, I think in Guatemala, where he explains the Austrian business cycle theory in a more friendly way to neoclassicals. But yeah, other Austrian economists here in Argentina have called him a Chicagoite neoclassical. I don't think it really matters. Like if when it comes to academia, I guess it does matters. But in public policy, he's full into Austrian stuff. I asked him personally about um, fractional reserve banking, and he said he thought it was illegal to have fractional reserve banking. So he's in favor of having 100% reserves in the banks. So yeah, and I think some of what I said in the podcast with Tom was that yeah, he has neoclassical people in his team, but him being some kind of an Austrian, like, well, they will find common ground. So
Yeah, well, getting rid of the central bank is definitely an Austrian principle. I mean, that's one thing, and and of course, I also know that he was very influenced by the Market for Liberty by Morris and Linda Tannehill, which I had Jorge Truco on, and he of course translated it into Spanish and gave Milei a copy. So yeah, so when did you meet Milei?
I met Milei last year.
Yeah.
I was invited to. It is uploaded on the internet. It is a program where people who supported Milei were able to make questions to him, and he would be some kind of like the podcast host, and I was invited, so I got to ask him about fractional reserve banking. So I met him there, and then I met him in the party, because I used to be in the Libertarian Party here in Argentina.
Yes, that's Avanza Libertad.
That's the coalition of parties there, but there's a specific party which was the Libertarian Party.
Okay, yeah, Libertad, La Libertad Avanza. Yeah, it's
La Libertad.
Yeah, that's a very interesting system they have. Considering how the system in America is somewhat rigged, I don't know if a Milei could happen here just for that reason alone. But there are other reasons why I don't know if he could happen here. But because it seems like you have a very, very open system where pretty much anybody who even would be considered a third or fourth candidate has a chance at winning. So that had to be really exciting though if you met this guy, met this man when you're just still rather young, because I think you're still 19, so you would have been 17 or 18 then. Wow, yeah.
Yeah, it was in those early stages where it was easier to meet him. Yeah. Like the people that were involved in the movement in that time, it was easier to meet them then than now. Of course, now it is impossible because he's the president, unless you are like someone really important. But in those days, and I of course met him in the rallies, and I saw him there and took pictures with him. But yeah,
is he really approachable, or is?
He seemed to be a good guy, at least. That's the impression he gave me when the times I met him. Of course, I've heard other stuff, but I cannot vouch for that information.
Oh yeah, and it depends on whether he's having a good day or a bad day. Yeah, so it can be.
Yeah, of course.
I never. You don't want to. You never. You can't judge people in 5 minutes. People are lifetimes. But yeah, so you got into economics, and you talk about the theories of the business cycles, and that's very interesting. So it sounds like you're saying though that he's a more mathematical person than maybe.
Yeah, mathematical. Like I remember in a presentation he gave in also last year with other economists, he made an argument in favor of eliminating the central bank, all using mathematical equations. Like he had a PowerPoint on, and all of it was mathematical equations. Of course, I couldn't follow because I'm not that good. I'm not good at mathematics, but he's in the methodology. He's mathematical, and that's why I say that he's not a praxeologist in that sense.
Yeah, he's not a praxeologist. Yeah. That's very interesting. So So one thing we're hearing a lot about is these things they call LELIQs. What can you tell me about those? This is it's LELIQ. It's a
Yeah.
acronym. And apparently this is going to involve these are somehow going to impact the economy, or there's either they've borrowed money, or there's something like options or derivatives, or I don't really know it all. If you could explain.
So this
Yeah.
is so this is what happens with the LELIQs.
Yeah.
Normally, central banks in normal countries have only the monetary base as their. I think it's called like liability, on the things they owe. The only thing they owe is a monetary base, and then they have things they actually own. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so here, the central bank is not normal. So
Yes.
here, the central bank owes the monetary base and the LELIQs. So the LELIQs are quasi-fiscal, not money, but they are government bonds that basically, if you have a LELIQ, the government pays you every month a
Yes.
certain amount of interest for having the LELIQ. So you initially buy it, and then you gain interest just for having it. Then you got the passes, which are 1 day debt. So every day you get they every day you get interest for them.
Yeah.
So it's basically central bank debt that multiplies the inflation every month. So because you have to print money to pay the interest for the LELIQs. And what's the most important issue when it comes to LELIQs is that, so I'm gonna kind of start the story over so it makes sense for the viewer.
Yes.
So we got fractional reserve banking as every country in the world. So the banks take your money, or you give them your money. They keep a certain amount on the vault, and then they lend all the other stuff, all the rest of it. So one would think that they use all the rest of the money to lend it to investors or something like that. No, it doesn't happen here. Here they borrowed LELIQs. So all the money that people gave to the bank, the part that it is not kept by the bank, is in LELIQs. So because it is more profitable for the banks to have LELIQs than to actually invest.
Yeah.
So what happens if people go to the banks? There's a bank run, and people go to the bank and ask for their money.
Yeah.
The banks will say to the central bank, okay, give me, I will sell you the LELIQs, give me the pesos back. And that would help generate a huge inflation, because I think like the ratio between like monetary base and the LELIQs are like 7-1. So there's like 7 LELIQs for every 1 peso there it is in circulation, something like that. Don't take me don't take my
Yeah.
numbers, but it's a huge difference. So the risk with the LELIQs is that if there is a bank run, there's going to be hyperinflation, and at the same time, if there's no bank run and you keep on with the LELIQs, you're going to have huge a lot of inflation, like every like you're going to have inflation continuously and systematically. So that's what happens with the LELIQs. They are government debt that generate interest on the banks, that it's more profitable than actually doing investment. So that's what happens with the LELIQs. Yeah.
So yeah, as you point, so it's a ratio of 7-1. So it'd be like the government has $100 worth of gold, but they've put out, or 100 pesos worth of gold, but they've put out 700 pieces of paper for that gold. 700 pesos worth of paper is
Yeah.
what you're saying. And so the government issues these. They're like bonds. Like the government issues these pieces of paper to the banks. The banks, uh, give them pesos. But now they've basically printed LELIQs out of thin air. It sounds like, or they've.
Yes, they have always printed the LELIQs out of thin air to cope with inflation. because the pesos go to LELIQs, so you don't have inflation in pesos. So they use LELIQs kind of that was the whole scheme was to counter inflation. Like instead of having pesos, you have government bonds, these LELIQs, and then you have less inflation. But at the same time, you're building up a huge like a ball of inflation with the LELIQs that if it were to be released, it would be quite a problem. Like if we are already in having high inflation because of regular because of government issuing money, like if you take into account the LELIQs as well, I mean we're going to have an inflation unheard of even in Argentinian standards.
So this is another way to just play with numbers and make things seem better than they are. So the banks buy these bonds, and so if everybody tries to go to the bank to get their money out, what happens then?
So it is no problem if one person goes to the bank and wants to get out the money, okay? But if everybody goes at the same time, as we know it happens during bank runs, the money's not there. As Rothbard said, all banks are bankrupt because they can never fulfill their contractual duties. So if all the Argentines go to the banks and ask for their money, there are three things that can happen. The bank tells the central bank, the private bank tells the central bank, okay, give me the pesos and I give you the LELIQs because I need the pesos to pay my the people that gave me their money. So, and that's going to generate a hyperinflation. So the other thing that can happen is that the central bank says, I'm not giving you the pesos. So people lose all of their deposits in pesos, and that would make the demand of pesos go down, and it would generate inflation anyways, and it would mean basically like a massive expropriation of private property, because the government would be saying basically, well, you don't have a right to your money, something like that. So, and the other thing that can happen is that if there's a bank run and the banks ask the central bank for the pesos, the central bank can say, okay, I'm not going to give you the pesos, but I'm going to give you another bond for a longer period of time that I'm going to pay sometime. So that's a way to postpone the problem, if you could say that. So those are at least the three scenarios I've heard of that can happen when it comes to the LELIQ. All of them are terrible. So if you want to get into that, like the ways they can solve the problems, this LELIQ problem, there are basically two ways that do not hurt the market as much. One way is to exchange the LELIQs for dollars, but you have to get the dollars first. The government has to get the dollars. The other way could be to exchange them for longer term bonds, longer term debt. So you kind of postpone the problem and say, okay, we'll see about it. We'll deal with it later. And that's what I heard they may do. But the crucial thing here is that this whole LELIQs and passes and whatever you want to call it was all a scheme to take pesos out of the economy, so to like mitigate the monetary inflation.
Yeah. So have there been any bank runs or anything like that down there, or is it pretty much?
No, not recently. I think the last bank. I mean, people are always scared that there's going to be a bank run. It's a regular thing that sometimes journalists and TV will say, there's fear of a bank run, but there has not been a bank run so in recent times.
So there's not been a bank run, yeah. So that was one thing about Milei coming to the USA. Was he trying to maybe get the U.S. government to buy some LELIQs, or try to get it somewhat of a bailout from the U.S., or what do you think he was trying to accomplish there?
I think what he was trying to accomplish was to try to get investors to lend the Argentinian government dollars so they can pay off the LELIQs and get rid of them. That's what I think he was trying to do. Of course, the other thing was to visit government officials there in the U.S. and maybe get the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, to be more amicable with us. I don't know. But every time an Argentinian politician goes to the U.S. is to get money. So that's pretty much what we do when Argentine officials go to the U.S. It's one way or another to get people to borrow to lend us money.
That's very interesting. They're probably not the only ones we can say that about either. So yeah, so so he's already, but he also realized, getting dollars in would maybe solve, just getting dollars would be able to, I mean, there's obviously some steps he's going to need to take before he decides to make the dollar or dollarize the economy. Which, from what I hear, it's already dollarized to a certain degree anyway, because most major purchases are made with dollars.
Yeah,
your cars or your real estate or stuff like that. But so there's already, and I've heard there's already a large, vast quantities of dollars in down there already. So, so that's so what do you think he'll try to do? What do you think he'll try to do, or what kind of plans do you think he has to clear up these LELIQs? I mean, and how soon can he do this?
I've heard that his finance minister or economics minister Caputo wants to exchange them for longer term debt. So basically, he's gonna take the LELIQs and say, okay, we're not gonna pay you in a month, we're gonna pay you in 10 years, something like that. And that way, like, kind of, it's a way of saying we're gonna deal with it later, and it's not gonna explode now. So we'll see about it in the future when the country is better. That's what I heard they might do. They have not been clear on what they are gonna do yet, but the rumors are that what I just described is what's gonna happen. Because the other way is to pay them off with dollars, but there are no dollars in Argentina reserves. Net bank reserves in Argentina are negative. That means that the central bank owes more than what it owns. So
Yeah.
That's what I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I would prefer that he pays them off in dollars.
Mm-hmm.
Because issuing more debt, it's never it's never desirable, but I guess that if it's that the way it's going to happen, I mean, I'm not going to protest that much either.
Yeah, I think he knows that they can't go into more debt. I mean, he's basically said we have no money. And
Yeah,
who are and the banks, are the private banks, are most of the holders of these LELIQs, or just
the private banks.
yeah.
So there's a fun, little story about that. Here, the Argentinian Amazon called Mercado Libre has its own digital, how do you call it, like a digital pocket, like digital, like where place where you put your money and you can pay stuff. So sort of like a PayPal, but
Yeah.
and what happens is that the banks don't like that because it's easier to use this application than the than using your regular banks. So people are shifting their money from the bank to these digital apps, digital wallets. That's the word. So they are taking their money from the banks to the digital wallets, and the banks don't like that. So the banks are increasing. During the previous government, they were continuously pushing for more regulations and taxations on the digital wallets. So the people won't. It would be even more expensive to use them, so people would just stay in the banks. So the banks they keep on with their cartel sort of behavior.
Yeah, and I assume the banks are mostly what would be part of the caste, correct?
Yes, yeah.
And I suppose the banks probably own a lot of real estate and own some other things, and this is where people are. Yeah, yeah. Are the banks? How are the bankers? Are they probably opposed to Milei, or are they pretty much in favor of him, or they're just kind of
I
neutral?
think there are some of them that are in favor of Milei. There's one of them that used to be in his team. I don't know if he's still in it.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, well, I mean, the the corporate class here in Argentina, they usually go with the with whoever is in office. Uh, I don't have a pretty good image on the corporate class here in Argentina because they're usually always the same people. With the entrepreneurs are having a hard time
Mm-hmm.
for many years now in getting into that level of wealth and steam. So yeah, I assume that some of them support him now and others stay quiet, but it's difficult to say.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very difficult to say. Interesting enough, just saw a picture today also of another picture of Millet raffling off his salary.
Oh
I
yeah,
guess, I guess he does that. Does he do that once a month or once?
he does that once a month. I don't know if he's gonna continue doing it now that he's president, but when he was a deputy in the legislative
Yeah,
chamber, he used to do that every month.
yeah, yeah. When he's in the he's because he doesn't like politicians. So and that's a good way to collect email addresses and get people on his email list. And he also maintains some goodwill there. And it's funny you yeah. I wonder if that technique could be employed elsewhere. Well, certainly, but it's hard to say what kind of regulations you'd run into. So there's the banking and there's the so yeah. So you think this plan could? So you has Meatley had any obstacles into his plans yet, or are they just kind of waiting and see? I mean, obviously he's got some enemies there, and he still doesn't have even close to a majority in either house of the legislature.
He has not run into uh, any like serious opposition yet
Yeah,
because he has not done like anything that radical, except maybe the 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 dollar that the government sells, like the official dollar. He doubled up. It was 400 pesos for a dollar. Now it's 800 pesos for a dollar. So he made it's sort of like a devaluation of the currency. I don't know if you call it that, but and today there, uh, in theory, there should have been an executive order deregulating a good part of the economy. But the thing is that a lot of those regulations have to be, if they were to be uh, uh, got rid of, they would have to be get rid of by the legislative chambers, by the legislator. So he cannot do it from an executive order, but some of them he can. So he apparently, I think, if it hasn't happened now, it will happen like tonight. Uh, it was announced yesterday. So he is doing what he can do from the executive power. So we'll see what happens when he goes for the
Yeah.
to get laws passed by the Congress. So let's see what happens when Milei decides to do that, which everyone thinks will be pretty soon. And another issue that he's gonna run to in 5 days is a massive protest by social and leftist movements. These are socialist, like pure communist movements
Yes.
that they get like 2% of the votes in general elections, but they mobilize a huge amount of people.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens there if there's social unrest or violence. Uh, the internal security um, minister has already said that they are not gonna tolerate any roadblocks or anything like that. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. It's a big if, but
Yes. Maybe they'll get to arrest Miriam Bregman. Yeah.
you know her.
Yeah. I was watching the debates. Yes. I mean, she got about 1% of the vote, and she is definitely a communist. I mean, she's unapologetic communist. And I don't know what it is about, and that's something I've noticed that seems to be the characteristic of the far left is, I've been to I've been to plenty of rallies, demonstrations. I go out, I stand on a sidewalk. I may go out stand on a lawn somewhere, but I don't block traffic. I never have. I never will. What is it with this side that feels like it's necessary to detain motorists, which is what you're doing? You're basically holding motorists prisoner, and until you get out of their way. And it's really some of this is really reaching a breaking point too. It's you there was that guy in Panama who shot protesters. There was that. It's yeah, it's really. I mean, and people might very well be sympathetic to your cause, but you're just
Yeah.
sometimes blocking ambulances and stuff like that, and it's just not. Yeah, it's.
I think that the far left has not only are they entitled, like they do think that they are entitled to do such a thing, but they have a disdain, like sort of a they don't like they have a like a feeling of hatred and that they don't care of whoever is not in their movement. They don't they see it as an enemy.
Yeah.
So they don't care when they block a street and
Mhm.
prevent ambulances
Yeah.
or anyone getting to work. So that's the feeling I get from them. At least the ones that actually block. Of course, there are leftist people that are not in favor of that, but they are
Yeah.
minority.
Yeah. Well, yeah. We don't haven't really polled that many, but there's always enough that makes it a real major disruption. Unfortunately, yeah. It's a yeah. I've seen some of that stuff on security too. Is that they're going to like send bills to these organizations for damage. People are going to be arrested immediately if they're blocking traffic. Uh, it, some people on the left have cried, "Oh, you're censoring us," and said, "No, we're not censoring you. We're just," and also some other things like can't bring sticks out or things like that. Can't
Yeah.
do anything
Or
with
you're gonna bring babies or toddlers.
yeah, yeah. Yeah. I'm curious. Is it just does that just apply to infants or what?
I think it applies to like people less of 18 years old, like in
Okay.
general.
I don't know if I necessarily fear that. It's you're also going to outlaw parents taking them to church, but yeah, but it certainly does. I mean, kids can get in harm's way, but I wouldn't. I don't necessarily agree with that, but but I will say I don't necessarily agree with taking kids to protests either because these kids don't have beliefs. They're just up until a certain age, most kids just repeat whatever politics that they hear at home. It's
Yeah, the thing is that they use them as human shields here.
oh
So
oh
they put them in front of the police for so the police doesn't advance towards protesters. So that's what they do. They put the moms with the kids. So that's the problem. It's not that like eh, the the people that put out these laws against that are
Right.
are against it, taking kids or minors to protest in general. Is that the people that take minors to protest, they use them as human shields. So that's the issue. So yeah, I wouldn't be in favor either of outlawing like kids in protest. But the thing here is that they use them as human shields.
Wow. Yeah. Well, I hope everything is peaceful and stays peaceful. I don't want to see cops beating up people just because. But and I don't know how it is elsewhere, but there's certainly plenty of places where you just go out there and express your opinions. You'll get beat up. It happens in Russia. It happens in Venezuela. So it's never happened to me as an American. So I'm glad to say that. But yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. So yeah, very interesting. And looks like also he's a there. While we're talking about the security issue, there's apparently been some cracking down on crime. I saw a video from Rosario, and and apparently the prisoners are living like kings in there. They're getting all these luxuries, and they went in and took all these luxuries away and said, "No, you can't. You're going to live like a convict." Is that right, or what's going on on that end? I think
Yeah, yeah, that's what it was going on. Like
yeah,
they would bribe the guards and get
yeah,
and live in prison like if they were
mhm,
living in their own homes. And
yeah,
but most importantly, they were administrating their
mhm.
illegal affairs from from jail
Yes,
itself. So what the governor of Santa Fe, which is the province that is on top of Rosario, what he did was to send the police in and into the jails, uh, take all their stuff away, their cell phones and all of their luxuries, so they cannot communicate with the exterior and plan their assassinations and stuff like that. Of course, all of this is because of the war on drugs,
yeah,
which is well, it's I don't know what's your stance on this, but at least people here, they they are most people are fully like uh, in favor of it. Like they want drugs to be cracked down, and people that sell drugs are arrested, and the people that take the drugs be sent like
yeah.
forcibly to rehabilitation, stuff like that.
Yeah, I'm not in favor of making drugs illegal, but if people are going to be, but the illegality creates this underworld of murders and other things like that.
Yeah,
It's uh, yeah, yeah, and you have more people killing or engaging in gang wars, and that's something we certainly don't want. I mean, if you're in jail, you should be. If you're in jail, you should be in jail. You shouldn't be
yeah, I
able
should be in jail.
be able to live like you're just doing the same things as you were before. I mean, I don't expect them to live without anything. I mean, let them read books or listen to music, but still, if they can manage all their, you got some boss in there who's still managing all his affairs, that's a problem.
Yeah, yeah, totally.
Yeah, and apparently Rosario is one of the more dangerous places, from what I've heard.
Yeah, it's very very dangerous.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's like
and
I think. Yeah.
I also think that's probably one of the best public relations movie that can happen.
Hmm.
If you're seen as cracking down on crime, the public generally responds to that pretty positively. Uh, is how safe is Argentina right now? Is it? I've heard mixed reports about this.
Well, it's difficult to speak of all Argentina
Yeah,
because,
yeah,
but at least in Buenos Aires, where I'm from, where I am, it depends on the neighborhood
oh
pretty
yeah,
much. Like it's there are some, and when you go out of the capital, there's a so the capital is like it's not a province, but it's what do you call it, like a federal district, something like
yeah,
that.
the district, yeah,
Yeah. And so when you go out of there, you go to the rest of Buenos Aires, which is the province of Buenos Aires. Some parts of it are pretty dangerous. Like at some time when the sun comes down, nobody goes out, and there's rampant crime, and it's very dangerous if you go out at night,
Yeah.
and even during the day.
Yeah.
But what people do is in many parts of the province of Buenos Aires, like if they are going down a road and there's a red light, they just pass. They just go through it because you can't stop at any corner because
Yeah.
it's like there's a high chance of you being robbed and murdered. Those are some parts of the province of
Yeah.
Buenos Aires, and
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
cap.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, every city that's that big is going to have some neighborhoods that you just don't go to. I mean, whether it be New York City or London or Lima or Mexico City. I mean, they every city that big has those bad neighborhoods. I just wonder, overall though, as are most of the neighborhoods bad, or is it just,
I wouldn't say most of the neighborhoods are bad. I would say there's this like a 50-50% like
yeah,
relation.
yes. I mean, it's all, and sometimes just a matter of, and sometimes those numbers aren't easy to get either if you find accurate statistics.
Yeah.
I mean, certainly, yeah, no, but that's sometimes what I ask too. Is if I'm looking at Airbnbs and stuff, I will go out and ask people, say, okay, what neighborhood should I avoid here? Just to keep myself safe. But that you can usually see that in the ratings. Are there any other?
Yeah.
We mentioned Rosario. Is Rosario particularly dangerous, or is it just?
Rosario is particularly dangerous. Yeah, like it's the most like outstanding in a bad way place in Argentina when it comes to crime. Then you got the slums, which some of them, most of them are pretty dangerous. But if you're not a resident there, but the situation in Rosario is it's highly intense.
Yeah, it's highly intense. I've got to ask too. In a country that's had all the issues that it has, do you say? I mean, where I grew up, there's unfortunately a lot. Hear a lot of people overdosing and stuff just because there's such a culture of hopelessness. Are some of these places in Argentina just is that really the problem, or there's just an area where everybody's given up hope and they just don't have any hope that things are ever going to be right?
I've heard a lot of people that have that opinion that places like that exist. I don't personally know about them, but I've heard that people say, "Oh yeah, this place, the people that live there have forsaken all hope of progress, so you can't do anything about them." So I've heard that. I don't know if it's actually true, but I mean, what you're talking about is maybe a neighborhood where there's people like laying on the street taking drugs, stuff like that. Well, yeah, you got those scenarios, some neighborhoods, but it's not a generalized thing, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, for example, back where in my home state, there's a county that had about 100,000 people in 1950, and now that same county has about 25,000 people. I mean, just because people have left because of economic opportunity and things like that. It's because there just doesn't seem to be a lot of, if there isn't a lot, and you certainly have migrations, from cities to cities. I mean, or I don't know if they're going out to the country or they're going into the city. And sometimes in situations like this, people might take on a more independent streak too. They maybe get some land and go out in the middle of nowhere and just live off the land by themselves, and build a log cabin and hunt and grow their food, and that's it.
Yeah,
they just say the heck with it. They don't want to have to deal with anybody anymore, and that's one way you can be truly free.
That would be like a Henry David Thoreau, like kind of way of life.
Yeah. Yeah, you know about Thoreau. Yeah, So what's the you being 19, were there a lot of teenagers out there going out and working for Milei? It sounds like there were.
Yeah, I mean, if the election had been only like if the people that had voted were only the people with like less than 30 years old, he would have
Yes.
won by 70%, like something like that. The, the support for Milei comes mainly from young people. He has made quite a good impression on young people. Yeah.
What do you think he's doing right there? Is it just because he comes off as being a really fun guy?
I mean, in some aspects, yes. I mean, when if you look at the
Yeah.
at his early years in TV, he used to be quite a character, like
Yeah.
screaming and telling people, "Oh, you're a Keynesian motherfucker" or something like
Yeah.
that. Sorry, but uh, so that made quite an impression in I mean in young people just for being this funny guy on TV. Uh, but yeah, I think he did well basically because he was not all, I mean, he's young himself. He's not an old person.
Yeah.
So he he took a very interesting attitude when screaming but he was not doing it without content. He was not like just insulting or saying nonsense. He was actually trying to make a case in favor of something, in this situation the free market. So there was content in his rage and all that stuff. So he got into young people, I think, that way. At least I mean, with me was another situation, but with generally with people, young people, at least the ones I've met, it was that, like, his demeanor, like his attitude. He used to be he used to get mad very easily at leftists.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Maybe he's toned it down because he's got more popular, or maybe he's just toning it down because more people are listening. Because I because when people start to listen, you don't necessarily feel like you have to scream as much.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
that makes sense, and of course he has to reach a I mean, he has already done that. I mean, he's the president, but during his campaign, he had to reach a more broader audience.
Yeah.
So he had to moderate not only his proposals but his attitude as well.
Yeah. And I think being a rock singer helped him a lot too. I mean, he knows how to get up on stage and play with the crowd and get them excited. And that's usually and bands. That's usually why they might pick a lead singer. Said, well, look how he's got the crowd going. You get the crowd going, get them excited. I mean, he's I have sometimes called it rock star liberalism because that's really a good way to put it. He's just filling up bars or filling up and I think you get a certain and it gives you a certain amount of confidence too. Yeah. So uh, I know there's a yeah, and he's got some allies in the media. I know there was that is it Alberto Fantino?
Yes, Fantino.
Yeah, Fantino, is that, did I say Alberto? Is that right, or is
uh I can't
Fantino?
remember his name,
Yeah.
his first name, but yeah, his surname is Fantino.
Alejandro Fantino, yeah.
Alejandro, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Alejandro Fantino, yes. I think that was maybe one of his first TV appearances, and then he went on some other. But
Yeah.
I suspect there's some other people in the news media who really hate him.
Oh, of course. If you go into the Peronist slash leftist media, they absolutely hate him.
Yeah,
Uh, they call them a neoliberal, even a neo-fascist. Like they call him every name, like
yeah,
every bad name possible. But he has some. I mean, he has had some support during his campaign, and now that he's in office,
yeah,
many more people in the media have gone out to support him.
yeah.
So there's been a shift in that as well.
Yeah, I had another guy on here too, and he said also, I don't know how significant it was, but he also talked about immigrants from Venezuela supporting him.
Oh yes, yes, yes. Um, Even if in the rallies you would see people holding up the Venezuela flag. Yes, he had had some support from people from
Yeah,
Venezuela. Yeah, but they have lived socialism,
yeah,
like right on their faces, and they have to flee their country because of it. So they know better than anyone else, like how is it to live in a basically a dystopia.
and they don't want to see it happen here.
Yeah, they don't want to see
You
it
know,
happen here.
one thing getting back to some of the unrest is I'm hearing also that a lot of that unrest that's been going on is sometimes they've been supported by Maduro in Venezuela or some other people like that. That he's actually giving them funding, or and Castro apparently started doing this back in the 70s. He was funding these revolutionary groups elsewhere.
Yeah, I've heard that even Che Guevara
Yeah.
used to talk to Argentinian guerrilla leaders to
Yes.
like to train them and give them advice on how to take over the country. So that goes a long way back. Now I don't know how significant that is. I don't
Yeah.
have that information, but it has been a recurring thing of Cuba, Venezuela, especially Cuba, supporting the leftist movement here, especially like in the last 20 years when the
Yes.
Peronists have begun, uh, like Peronists have begun definitely to the left, like the right wing Peronists are now a minority, so left wing Peronists
Yeah.
have taken over the Peronist movement, and they are supported by Cuba and Venezuela. Of course, now Venezuela is having their own. They are having their own troubles. They are trying to, I know, invade this other country, Guyana.
Yeah.
Uh,
And while we're on the topic, I need to give a shout out to an associate of mine, Pedro Aruchurto Nocelli. He is a great activist from Venezuela who is on Maduro's arrest list that was announced about a
uh,
week ago. I know that I've heard from reliable sources that he is safe, but he is a good man. He's working hard in Venezuela. I know a lot of people who are from Venezuela, and of course, Milei also got a nice congratulatory note from Maria Corina Machado, but of course, she's not able to leave the country. So, but yes, there are some heroes in Venezuela, and they're trying to bring back the country.
yeah,
I although I think a war would probably be the best case scenario because wars often destroy corrupt regimes. But uh, so maybe
yeah. I
that
fear I fear for the
for
common
him.
people, like
Yeah,
during that war. Yeah,
yeah. But we won't go there. But maybe they possibly saw that we don't want to end up like this, and so they were telling the Argentines, yeah. And Octavio, I'm curious, since obviously I'm assuming your parents are still alive, and maybe even have grandparents who are still alive. What did you tell mom and dad? What did you tell your family about this? I mean, talking politics with the family can often be a minefield, but it does come up. What kind of
so
conversations did you have with them?
I have to be careful when talking about this because they will listen to this
Yeah,
podcast
yeah.
later.
If you don't want to go into too much detail, I understand. You don't have to answer this question, but
I will answer. Yeah, I
yeah,
mean, uh, so some of my family is used to be. um I mean, it's a very mix. Like I was the first libertarian.
yes,
Like they hadn't heard of libertarianism, like never, like none of them in my family.
yeah,
And I was the first one, and I convinced some of them, my grandparents, for example, at least of voting for Milei. I don't know if they are like committed libertarians, but they voted for Milei, and I know as many other members of my family voted for Milei, but yeah, I mean, political talking within the family, it's I mean, it depends on who you talk to.
Yes, especially with Christmas dinner coming up.
Yeah, especially with Christmas dinner.
And sometimes I wonder if it's a good thing that we have our. I got. By the way, since you're on here, I got to ask. Tell us about Christmas in Argentina.
Well, it is pretty hot because we're
Yeah,
in summer, so we don't we all of the the companies that promote their products during Christmas, all of it is like, oh, it's like it's winter, but it's summer.
yeah,
Uh, I mean, it's a pretty nice time of the year. I mean, the tradition here is to celebrate of course, Christmas dinner and to open the gifts like at 12, 12 12 in the night.
yeah,
And you don't have to wait till the next morning. There's nothing like
yeah,
that. So it's pretty nice. There's a pretty big tradition about it. We have our own dishes. Uh, yeah, that I would say that. Yeah.
yeah. I can imagine. Yeah, obviously the other time of year, people singing songs, going out to midnight mass, or yeah, I can imagine. So
Yeah.
I know one person who actually got to spend Christmas in Iquitos in Peru in the
Uh-huh.
rainforest, and she said she loved having Christmas in the rainforest. Yeah, just so wild. And yeah, and Iquitos is still a very very poor city, but yeah. Yeah, I can imagine. That's something else too. About crime and stuff. Do you see people just living out on the streets, or are they pretty much in?
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's I wouldn't say rampant, but there's a
yeah,
lot of that. Yeah. People living in the streets or just
yeah,
walking like having nowhere to like live. um Vagrants, so you
yeah,
got a lot of that. But
yeah. And a lot of them are probably hooked on drugs or something like that. But
yes, yeah, most of them.
yeah,
I think destitute people was like 10%, 9%,
yeah,
maybe. That's the statistic, I think.
yeah. What are some other actions that we definitely want to highlight here? I mean, Millet is going to cut the government from 21 ministries to 9 ministries, for example.
Yeah, he already did that. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was easy. Also, this might do more to get rid of government workers. He said, "No more working from home. You've all got to come into the office now."
Yeah, you gotta count
And
the
apparently,
office.
a bunch of them showed up, and I don't know if that's going to whittle some of them out, or they'll actually do. And apparently, also taking various luxuries away, like they were getting their government cars. He's going to take the cars away, and I don't know if I necessarily agree with taking their cell phones. I mean, you might need to have your cell phone to do your job, but I can certainly understand if you got to save money. And
I
yeah,
I think that all of those measures are just
yeah,
gestures. They don't mean even cutting the ministries from 21 to 9. It's almost symbolic. Um,
yeah,
like it in terms of spending, it's a very little amount. But I mean, it is a gesture. I
yeah.
mean, it's a good thing. But I wouldn't give it as much relevance as many people are giving it.
Where does most of the spending go? I suppose it's on various entitlement programs or pensions or what?
Pensions, yeah.
Yeah,
It goes mostly on pensions, on government subsidies to electricity and gas. Um, uh, but yeah, I think that the two uh, most significant spendings are social security and subsidies.
yeah,
And he's cutting the subsidies and in electricity and
yeah,
gas, and also in public transportation. And when it comes to pensions, he is right now. If you have a pension, it is automatically every month, like you get an increase depending on inflation. He wants to get rid of that and make the increments by decree. So the pensions will actually every time they say that, it's because they want to lower the amount of increases that they do on pensions.
Okay, yeah. So, yeah. Do they spend a lot of money on the military there?
Oh no, the military Argentina is defenseless, like completely like Uruguay could invade us tomorrow.
Yeah,
Uh, there's not much money going into that. Like the navy is
yeah,
like, even they had to stop using warships and leave them in the ports, and some of them like sunk by themselves. So and
yeah.
yeah, we don't have any. Like the fighters we have in the air force are from the 19 are from the, I don't know, the Korean War.
Okay, yeah.
uh
Yeah, well, that's one thing. So when he's when he has Zelensky at his inauguration, or he says I stand with Israel, he's really just he's not sending the money. He's just saying I support you and
yeah,
express.
no, we don't have any money to send.
Yeah, we don't have any
Being
money.
realistic.
Yeah, or sometimes sometimes also in the case of America, it'll be old surplus stuff. Like we can't use these tanks anymore, so you can have them. We can't use these guns anymore. You can have them. We bought too many guns. It's a but it's kind of become a racket in America. It's really just about just making defense contractors rich. Which I guess if you have no defense contractors, that helps. But you still have to have some defense. And also we're getting back to the crime issue. Is most crime law enforcement come down from the federal level, or is it more localized? Because yeah,
It is quite localized. I
yeah,
would say, like, every province has its own police,
yeah,
and sometimes even the towns have their own police.
yeah,
uh you got of course the federal police,
yeah,
but they only act when federal crimes are committed, like murder
yeah.
or trafficking. Most of the stuff is done by the local authorities.
Yeah, so or sometimes these crimes might involve crossing provincial lines, going from one jurisdiction to another. I mean,
Yeah. Mhm.
I don't know how it is in other countries, but I know, but sheriffs in America, then that's usually the local at the county level, which is maybe 10,000 or 30,000 people. But sheriffs in America have a lot of power. They're elected, and they have I mean, if they can say I'm not enforcing this law, and usually there isn't a whole lot that anybody can do about it. It's they can nullify laws at the federal level either way. I wasn't sure what it was like up down there.
um I mean, there's a lot of negligence in that sense.
Yeah,
Like, police won't enforce
yeah,
a, a lot of laws. Sometimes they would even get paid by the criminals themselves
oh
to leave a
yes,
zone, like without police, so
yeah,
they can commit crime there. Like, if it was, I don't know, some kind of purge. We call that a, like, liberated zona liberada. Um
yeah,
so
yeah.
they do that. So they if the top ranks of the police or the government, like, don't know about it, they pretty much can do what they want. There's not much that the common people can do about it. So I guess that's similar in that sense to US.
Yeah, but and yeah, it does lend itself to corruption. They in Mexico they say just give a police car pulls you over, just give them 20 pesos and it's over. It's a
Hmm.
which in Mexico is the equivalent to about $1 American. It's like, oh yeah, I can make a cop go away for $1. Yeah, sure, that's. But you also end up if you end up with a culture of bribes, it makes it very hard to really do bit. But sometimes it can you don't want to have, where people who can afford the bribes can do business and people who can't afford the bribes don't do business. But
Yeah.
Is there
Yeah,
a
it is
lot?
another cost that they have to incur. Yeah.
Yeah, is there a lot of, sometimes also, and I'll go back to Mexico, but if a business starts making too much money, the cartels or whatever will come and say, okay, we want to take a piece of your action and give us a cut of your profits or something. And said, okay, does that happen down there, or is it still pretty much
that happens even in like small businesses here.
Yeah.
I know of real cases where small businesses have to pay not only the police for the police themselves not to rob them, but to the criminals themselves, like for protection, like on quote unquote.
Yeah.
So that happens. Yeah. I mean that kind of crime that does happen.
Yeah, that's quite unfortunate. Yeah, because you can't really build a business and nobody can really accumulate wealth because you end up with this frozen system where people are born poor stay poor and people who are born rich stay rich, and there's no mobility either way.
Yeah.
I mean, people have told me, for example, that Christina Kirchner acquired a lot of real estate while she was
yes.
and if you're in an area where the real estate is probably the best thing you can own in a super inflationary economy, because it's a fixed asset. I mean, Argentina has had a certain number of square kilometers 150 years ago, and they still got the same amount of square kilometers.
Yeah, I mean, if you get kind of like hyperinflation in Venezuela's situation, then real estate doesn't become the best option. But yeah, Christina Kirchner has taken a lot of money from the when she was in office and has bought a lot of real estate.
Mm-hmm.
He also has people that it's her property, but it's on the name of some other people, so she used them that way. Because I've heard of people that buy properties in Venezuela for like a mansion for like $4,000, but they don't plan on using it now, but it's sort of like an investment for the future, like because sometime Maduro is gonna go, and the situation is gonna get better. So you buy that land for a very low price and expect it to remunerate in the future.
Yeah. What did you think overall of the ceremony on Sunday? I mean, I haven't watched an American presidential inauguration, and I don't know how long, but I was tuned in, and it was 3 hours earlier here, so it was I was up at 8 o'clock in the morning. So.
Oh yeah, I was in the inauguration. I actually saw Milei pass with his car when he was waving at people. Took a good video of it. I think it was pretty good. Like it was a bad thing that he did not transmit for the public the inauguration, or I don't know how they call it, of his ministers. So when he took the oath of the ministers that are going to serve in his cabinet, he didn't transmit that into the MTV.
Yeah.
So that he has got some criticism because of it.
Yeah.
And later in the night, there was an opera show especially for him in the most important theater here in Argentina called the Teatro Colón. That wasn't also transmitted for the public, so he got some criticism because of that. But the rest of it was great. A lot of people went to the not only to the square in front of the executive building is, but also in front of the Congress. I was there, so yeah, it was pretty good. Like there was a very good feeling. So, and Milei's speech was, I don't know if it has been like subtitled to English yet, but it was very good.
Yeah, those captions usually appear. Yeah, I've heard it. It was a great speech. He really, and he didn't say that things are going to get great overnight. He said things, to his credit, things might get worse, but he thinks they can get better. Yeah, and I think maybe the fact that he said things are going to get a little worse, maybe that builds some trust because but things can get better. But and I hope he's going to need 8 years for this at least, and maybe if he gets things a lot better in 8 years, hopefully he can pick a successor, and maybe that'll, and Mileism will replace Peronism, and maybe Mileism will dominate politics for 100 years. It might be that could be really great for you all down there.
Well, yeah, if he's able to pull out a win in his economic program, I think he's in it for a longer run.
Yeah.
And here we have a tradition that if you do well in government, like we give you a pass, like you can say whatever time you want.
Yeah. Who are some of the other? Also I saw videos. People were out on the inauguration route the night before. They were camping out because they wanted to be in the front where they could see. I mean, I don't know if that's ever happened before, but that's pretty wild. It looks like it was a very festive, a lot of optimism. And what were some of the things I heard? I heard people saying "Libertad." What were some of the other chants I heard? "Viva la Libertad, carajo." Anything else that we heard there at the inauguration?
Oh yeah, the La Casta tiene miedo. The case is in fear.
Yeah,
Has fear.
La Casta
Uh,
tiene miedo. Yeah, the cast has.
yeah,
Yep.
that's a common one. And then, of course, the people, when Milei said we're going to cut public spending, and people were like, "Yes," and
Yeah.
that was a
Yeah.
for like political scientists, like regular political scientists here in Argentina. It was quite a surprise because they say that you cannot win an election promising cuts in public spending, what we call ajuste.
Yeah.
And what Milei did just that. He won a presidential election promising to cut public spending, and 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 do all the regulation and all that stuff. So
Yeah.
the books are being rewritten when it comes to that.
And he's a good speaker. Yeah, I sometimes I wonder if this will maybe fix the overall tr- direction of academia and things like this, because it's I've compared Milei to Lenin. I mean, not in politics, but for the impact. This is this is a lot. The capitalist revolution in Argentina. You know, like the Bolshevik Revolution in Russia in 1917. This could really launch. I really think this could launch something.
I mean, if his economic program
Yeah.
is successful, then yeah. But if not, I don't see a large libertarian core being formed here in Argentina. I think the libertarian, like of people that actually uh, know and are into the ideas of liberty, I don't see that. I don't see that a large part of Milei's voters
Yeah.
are part of that. I'm on that side of the
Okay.
discussion when it comes to that.
But you have mentioned that it seems like there are more people buying books and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, it's very easy now to get an Austrian school libertarian book now. So that
Yeah.
I'm not saying there's not a libertarian core. I'm saying it's not that big.
Yeah.
Uh, but people are getting more acquainted with Austrian school concepts. I get asked all the time, but by people who know I'm libertarian, what's the Austrian school, and I have to explain.
Yeah.
Uh, And what is libertarianism? Is there any other country that is libertarian? And you have to explain it. No,
Yeah.
but there are some free market countries, but this is the first one in theory that has a president that's a committed
Yeah.
libertarian.
That are more theory than others. Yeah. Maybe it'll change the minds of the college professors, because I assume they're all socialists.
Well, yeah, the academia in Argentina it's sort of like in the U.S. in that sense. They're pretty leftist.
I'm afraid it's that way in most places.
Yeah.
From what I've heard, that it's not necessarily that way in anything that was formerly dominated by communism, which would be, Central Europe, Poland, and even former Soviet republics. Yeah. What was also one thing I'm just curious about too. What was the makeup of Milei's support? Pretty much, I mean, like the volunteers and stuff, were they mostly men, or was it men and women, or pretty even? Or I suppose it was mostly younger volunteers.
When I was in the party, most were men. There were women, not many, but there were. Uh, but he has gotten a lot of support
Yeah.
from both genders. Yeah, it's not one-sided or anything like that. Of course, left-wing groups wanna make people think that Milei is only supported by men, like he's a
Yeah.
misogynistic leader, like an alpha type.
Yeah.
But no, it's nothing like that.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting how he's portrayed. I mean, I don't know if that's accurate, but it's and Argentina is still very much a pro-family country. Am I right? I mean, there's not really a whole lot of divorce, and I mean, there's people get married, have kids, and stay married, which is, I think, pretty necessary for a healthy society nowadays. But
I don't have the data, but in general, I would say yes. I mean, the family culture is not that it's not that eroded here. It's still a pretty big thing, and we were pretty conservative when it comes to divorce. Like that was
yeah,
I don't like that's very recent in terms of history. Like the law that permitted divorce, that's pretty recent, and the law that also permitted a gay marriage, that's also that 2014, I think, something like that. Uh,
yeah, yeah. So that's good. What do you got to say about some of the other people? I mean, Bullrich has done the security. I also heard too. We'll go back to Venezuela. That Bullrich has said that if did Bullrich say that if Maduro sets foot on soil in the country, she'll have him arrested for human rights violations?
uh, I haven't heard her say that, but it would be pretty nice if he has actually done
He
so.
won't. He won't go there. But yeah, I mean,
No, he won't.
there's definitely been a negative reaction from some of the socialists in South America. Petro
Oh,
didn't
of
like it.
course.
And, Petro in Colombia didn't like it. And, Ortega in Nicaragua doesn't like it. But Bukele, I hope he gets to hang out with Nayib Bukele pretty soon from El Salvador. It seems like Bukele certainly done some, and maybe that can be a model, because it sounds like what Bukele's accomplished there has been it's been a rapid turnaround as well, and Bukele is extremely popular.
Yeah, in Salvador, yeah.
Yeah, so and yeah, so when I come down there, where should I go? I go to Buenos Aires. I want to go to Ushuaia, just because it's there's a
Ushuaia.
Ushuaia, just because it's all the way down there and I can see the penguins. You know,
Nice.
yeah, and maybe some seals and stuff like that. But where any place else I should go? I've heard certainly
Oh, you
heard of
should go to Bariloche, definitely.
Bariloche. Yeah, what's there?
It's mountains, lakes, just beautiful scenery.
Yeah,
All of the businesses there are very nice. I've been there, and
yeah,
it's a great trip in any time of the year. Like you can go in winter and do ski, but you also can go in summer and go to the lakes. It's beautiful. You gotta look that up. Bariloche.
yeah. I've heard a lot. I've heard a lot of good. Yeah, I've heard a lot of things about the natural beauty down there. It just sounds like it's a really beautiful country, and it's still relatively sparsely populated. I mean, it's still 10th in land area, I think. I mean, that's a pretty big country, and it's 31st in population, which is
Hmm.
well, which means it's not a small country, but it's not necessarily a big country. It's I think,
I
what do
mean,
you think? Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, most of the country is sparsely populated. That there's been an internal migration towards the capital.
Oh
So,
yeah.
like in the capital and its outskirts, 14 million people live, like in Buenos Aires and the what we call the Grand Buenos Aires area. Um, Especially the southern part of the country, the Patagonia, that's very scarcely populated. Um, and some parts of the north. But because that was the thing of concentrating in the capital was because uh, initially, like in the 40s,
Yeah.
the government had uh, had put high taxes on exports from the regional economy. Uh, so people started shifting towards the capital where there was more industrial
Yeah.
um, jobs that didn't had so much taxes, and they were more profitable.
Yeah.
So there was an internal migration, and that has been going on for years and years.
Yeah. Well, that's good. Yeah. Well, this is anything else we should go over? Maybe in people, any particular people in his cabinet that we should talk about? Milei's cabinet,
Well, we have scarcely mentioned him, but you got the economics minister Caputo. Then
know.
you got um, Sturzenegger, who is I think it's modernization ministry, something like that. That he is
Modernization. That's just technology or what?
No, it's about deregulating the economy.
Oh, deregulating the economy. Well, that's good. Yeah, we need to deregulate.
Yeah,
Yeah, and some
he's
other.
the one that is this guy Sturzenegger is a pretty in
Yeah,
academia. He's pretty well known.
yeah,
Uh, he is the one that has made all the plans for deregulating the state and
yeah.
the economy.
And if
So
if you're comfortable speaking English, you are invited. Deanna Mondino is at the top of my list because I heard she speaks
very
English
good.
really well. Yeah,
Yeah, she's
yeah,
50.
she's the chancellor, I believe. Yeah,
Yes, she's a
yeah.
chancellor.
What's she do exactly?
And for like the Department of State in the U.S.
Yeah,
She represents Argentina to the foreign countries.
Also interestingly, the lovely Victoria Villarreal, I saw some pictures of her meeting with the at the Japanese embassy, and she's apparently fluent in Japanese. So
Oh
yeah,
yeah, I was surprised too. I didn't know.
so that could certainly maybe help build a trading partnership there with Japan, and I don't know if they'd go that far, but with Argentina being food rich and Japan being such a well, the geography of Japan means they're always going to import food, so that could maybe be
Yeah,
a good deal for you all, because
yeah,
yeah,
I hope so.
yeah,
Totally.
the dense population in the mountains have just always made Japan a very hard place to grow food. They've always had to import food. It's you got cheap steaks, they got expensive steaks, so there's a problem solved. Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
and people told me your food down there is amazing. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's yeah, yeah. And I don't know if there'll be any other good relations. What do you think is going to happen with the relations with your neighbors? Brazil and some of the others.
Um. So President Lula from Brazil didn't
Yeah,
come to the
yeah,
inauguration. So I don't know what's gonna happen there. Probably there. It's gonna be a sour relation because
yeah,
Milei during his campaign has when he talked about the Brazilian president,
yeah,
he spoke very bad things about him.
yeah,
He called him a communist and all that stuff. But the president of Chile, Boric, surprisingly came to the inauguration, although he's pretty leftist.
yeah,
Uh, but I imagine that we will be getting along with the people that we have to get along with.
yeah.
So that's those are the pro Western
Yeah.
civilized
Well,
countries, of course.
Well, I mean, yeah, that's the third. That's the third longest border in the world. I mean, you can't just. I mean, if I was, of course, Bork's got to show up. I mean, you can't just ignore your neighbor like that.
Yeah.
Even if you don't like your neighbor is still there.
Yeah.
You're going to have a relationship with your neighbor whether you want to or not. It's. I mean, certainly. I mean, whether it be Chile, Paraguay, Bolivia, or Uruguay, or Brazil. Yeah, but Bolsonaro went there, and
Yeah.
I know the king of Spain was there, I believe, and
Yeah.
any Zelensky from Ukraine. Anybody else worthy of note who was there? And
Viktor Orban from Hungary.
yeah, Hungary, Orban from Hungary. Yeah, there was a few others. Yeah. So it was a nice ceremony. Yeah, you got anything else left to say before we go? I mean, yeah.
Nothing comes to my mind. We have had a great talk.
We did have a great talk, and I do like the tradition of putting on the sash and having the baton. I think that really passing the baton and
Yeah.
putting on the sash. It kind of gives an elegance that
Yeah.
presidency. And I see the sash worn in some. I've seen Bukele with a sash. It does help though if you have a flag with horizontal stripes, but
Oh yeah.
you can just make it like a long flag. But I really like that. Yeah, that was a good speech. So yeah. Well, you sound like you're pretty optimistic about the future of your country, and I got to say, I'm in some ways more optimistic about you guys than our countries, but we'll see. So
We'll see.
please like the video, subscribe to the channel, check out my novel Escape from the Village. Go check out my Substack. Thank you, Octavio Bermudez. And no, that's not because he's the eighth child. I'm Chris Baker, and you're just on. I found you on LinkedIn. You're not really on any other social media or anything, are you?
That's something I gotta work on now. I am not on any.
Okay, well, I'm Chris Baker, and we're out.